Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting of the East Troy School District Board of Education and all other meetings of the board are open to the public in compliance with the state statute. Notice of the meeting has been sent to the media and/or has been publicly posted in an attempt to make the citizens of the district aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as posted.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from April 22nd, 2019, the regular board meeting.
I'll second it.
Any discussion or comments on the meeting minutes? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public participation. Does anybody like to speak on any topic tonight?
Are we on the sheet?
Martha?
We're on the agenda.
I know.
Appreciate that.
Okay, no public participation tonight. And no financial report tonight, so we'll move on to discussion action items. We're going to change the order a little bit and move up the Trig Star program contest and recognition first.
It doesn't matter. This way that I stand in front of everybody.
Yeah, okay. I'm John Kennard. Along with Ms. Beaver, we sponsored the Trig Star program, I guess. I'm the surveyor that is the contact for it's a nationwide program put on by the National Society of Professional Surveyors, and also the Wisconsin Society of Land Surveyors also participates in it statewide. It's actually nationwide. It's the same test from Maine to California. And they go, you do the individual schools, and then they have a state competition if anybody's interested, and then there's awards for that, and then you can go on to the national competition, and as you go up, the awards get to be greater. We've been doing it here for a few years. I think you've been here before. So tonight, Sophie is our first place winner, and Main Street Car Wash here is
I'm a monetary sponsor.
We do hand out a certificate of participation for everybody that tries, even whether they win or not. Everybody gets a certificate that says they tried. And if they participate, they're eligible to write for a scholarship nationwide if they decide to go into the engineering surveying type program. But we have second place is Noah. And our third place was Michaela. We had a pretty good range of students that took it this year, so it's a voluntary, I believe, at this school. Anyway, I've had other schools where they made it mandatory, but we were doing good with a voluntary type participation. So, yep, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll move back up to item A, staffing resignations.
Yeah, we have a few. The first one, Ms. Denise Ryan has informed us that while she has really enjoyed her position working with students and staff in her district, she's just not able to accept the contract for next school year because of personal circumstances. So she's intending, because of those personal circumstances, to be relocating out of the region. She said with sincere appreciation, Denise Ryan. So at this time, we would recommend approval of Denise's letter of resignation. Kate, do you have anything to add?
I'll make a motion to approve the resignation of Denise Ryan.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The second one is Ms. Tiffany Howe. She writes in her letter, please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my current teaching position as a 7th grade ELA teacher at the East Troy Middle School. My last day will be at the end of the 18-19 school year. I will miss the great number of personal connections that I've made over the past 2 years, and it is with a heavy heart that I leave my current position. Please accept my gratitude for helping to make my time teaching in the East Troy Community School District so rewarding. Best regards, Tiffany Howe. Administration recommends approval of Ms. Tiffany Howe's letter of resignation.
I'll make a motion to approve the letter of resignation.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Stace, did we have another one?
Yes.
Was that submitted up here or not? I'm sorry if it was.
No, we just got
Okay.
it today.
Okay. You can go ahead. Go ahead, Ruth.
That's my own copy. So you can write the book.
All right. Our last sorry, I'll read it. Our last resignation is from Omar Estrada. I'm writing this letter to inform you that I will not be renewing my contract for the 1920 school year at the East Troy High School. After much consideration, I've decided to pursue other career opportunities where I can spend more quality time with my family. The long hours of stress are too cumbersome for me to balance a positive family and work life. I've enjoyed my time teaching at East Troy High School, and the students and staff are the best. I am proud of what my students have accomplished this year and hope the best for them in the future. I would like to thank you, Principal Keene, and the rest of the staff for all the positive support and time I spent at East Troy High School. I will not forget this amazing opportunity anytime soon. I wish the very best for you and the East Troy High School and the students as you continue to help students grow. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me either at mail or telephone number. Sincerely, our sincere regards, Omar Estrada.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the resignation of Mr. Estrada.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Hopefully that's it.
That's it.
Staffing recommendations.
Kate, would you like to?
So I have the high school special education teacher. And you should have, I put the summary up there, the synopsis of hire. So we received 18 applications for the high school special education position. We interviewed 5 people. And the interview team is listed there, so we had a variety of special education staff, administration, and pupil services on the interviews. And asked candidates 15 questions related to instructional practices, special education processes, and district goals and initiatives. And have offered the position to Mr. Benjamin Nugent, and he verbally accepted today. So he has a background of interest and dedication of working with students with special needs. He's been working as a teaching assistant with special education students previously, and recently, I think actually next weekend, receives his master's in special education. Really strong references that in his ability to connect with students, flexibility, commitment, caring, all of that. And that he's really able to jump in and kind of do anything for the role that he's in currently. His interest in East Troy in particular, he mentioned positive experiences through coaching that he's had coming into the community, and really seeing how the community and district are visibly involved and committed to working together.
I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Benjamin Nugent for the 1.0 FTE special education teacher.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
Kevin?
Didn't see you back there. Come on down.
So I'm bringing forth the teacher we're looking to hire for our high school technology education. As you can see, on April 30th, we had a team of myself, Mrs. Keen, Mrs. Panchek, Mrs. Eckert, Mr. Maas, and Mrs. Lysing, who were part of the interview process. So we started off with 15 questions. And after we asked the candidates the questions, I took them on a tour. We talked about the programming that we had to offer. We talked a little bit more about some of the certifications that we have and some of the training they may need depending on where they are at as far as the training that they needed. And through this process, we were looking for someone that would be able to fill in the needs to continue our robotics programming, as well as our transcripted classes that we have in welding and our CAD classes. So after we went through that process, our team selected one of the candidates, and I did reference checks on him, and some of the comments that I got back was that he was very knowledgeable. He actually last year took over a class mid-year, and they felt like cleaned it up and actually began to improve the programming and look more like the class structure that they were looking for in their technology education programming. And so then in addition to that, they said he's always been willing to go to any trainings. I talked to him specifically as we went around the programming of the robotics, the training that he would need for that, as well as the Project Leads Way training. He's willing to do both of those. And when I did the reference checks, one of our final questions is, would you hire him for the position? And all of them said without hesitation that they would hire him for the position. So they actually had an opening, his position to be full-time, and they were looking to hire him for the position. So after doing the reference checks and talking to Jeff Trinka, I offered him the position as a full-time tech ed teacher here at the high school. Sorry about that.
Make a motion to accept Jeffrey Trinker as the 1.0 FTE high school tech ed teacher.
I'll second.
Discussion, questions? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Kevin. Any other ones?
Are there any others at this time? We're good?
Next item, approval of 66.0301 agreement between Clinton School District and the East Troy Community School District for a shared nursing position.
Kath, do you want to go over this one, or?
Kate and I don't know if you remember, it was a very small item on the budget, was a nurse shared position. Currently, we have a resignation of a part-time nurse. And we've worked on the part-time nurse structure for a few years now. And it hasn't produced the greatest of results. So we were hoping to get a better quality candidate if we split with another school district. So we have a 3-day-a-week position here and a 2-day-a-week position with Clinton. That's what this agreement is about. And we're looking to hire a joint full-time person to do both schools. Hoping that that will increase the pool of candidates that might be available to us. And it was a small amount, everything's a budget impact, but in the relative scheme of budget impacts, I think it was about $16,000 to split a full-time position versus having a part-time position. So this is a agreement, a cooperative agreement, and by Wisconsin law, it has to have this 660301 kind of format. And we're hoping that our board agrees to it tonight, and then the Clinton School Board will be agreeing to it in the future. If they have any amendments, I might be bringing it back, or something that got amended on Clinton's end, but that's the next step of what we're looking to try for a district nurse hire for next year.
And we're the primary operator and designated fiscal agent.
Yes.
And so.
I just volunteered to do that because we're doing that with Whitewater, with a physical therapist we're sharing, and so I've got the processes kind of down, so it was no big deal to add one more shared.
And Clinton's has the individual for 40% 2 days, and then we'll be doing 3 days per week, right?
Correct.
Is there error in the contract on page 3 about Clinton paying Edgerton?
Yes.
It's also on page 4.
Yes. They sent me a draft. They used to have an agreement with Edgerton.
Is that
So-
where the name of someone is in there too?
Did I print the wrong one? Because I thought we edited all of that out. Does other parts of it say East Troy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So then, yes, I missed a few. So yeah, if that was the old version. We do not have a person hired yet for this position.
But if you can work out somewhere, Edgerton and Clinton.
Hey, man.
We would be going through the hiring process really quickly, though. That's probably
I will edit that out and then have you sign it if it's approved tonight.
I'll make a motion to approve the intergovernmental contract with Clinton for a shared nurse.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Presentation and determination to approve creation of a lease with IGET Intergenerational East Troy for the use of neutral space at the Dover Building.
Oh, that's awful. I'm going to give you just a little background of why we're doing this as Lloyd gets ready. My name's Martha Bressler, and this is Lloyd Sinney, and the two of us became part of a 7-person steering committee about a year ago. And that was to look into what a larger group had been spending a couple years looking into, which was some needs that East Troy community had that as a project we could do. And the larger group had identified a new library, senior living, and the community center. And so our steering committee was kind of given that charge, please look into that now and see what you can do. And our committee had decided that one project with all three would be really great. So we were kind of looking at putting together an entity that would have a library and a community center on the first floor and senior living on the second and third floor. And we thought the good old Burns property would be just perfect. And so we were all kind of set to go. And as the committee developed, there were certain interests held by different people on the committee. But while we were doing our research and interviewing people and stuff, the village board decided that it would be a good time to look into a joint ownership of the library. And we really thought that that would have to be done anyway in order for us to even look at our project. So we went to the meeting where they were talking about doing that. The 3 boards were sitting down together. They were sharing the common goal. It was wonderful. But it became very obvious that this was not anything that was going to happen overnight. We were 2 months in before we could even get a question answered. So they it was obvious they were going to focus more on the library than the other parts of what we wanted to see done. And as an offshoot from that, the senior living part kind of took on a life of its own. And so standing alone was the community center. And that happened to be a real good interest of ours. So we just said, hey, couldn't we get together and at least get something started? It might be for when the library finally gets going that we could pick it up and we were to be part of that. But and the more we got into it, the more excited we got. So what you're going to see from Lloyd is what our proposal is to you about the community center that we'd like to see developed. Okay, you set the goal.
I'm going to stand back here so I can see the slides. You've all received a copy of this presentation. However, we've added some additional slides. So as soon as I'm done talking, we'll pass out the hard copies. We don't want you to jump to the end right away. As Martha said, high interest in this community center as we did our research a couple of years ago with the library study and then all the research that happened over a couple of years. The community center component was considered highly desirable. And we received a lot of data about the types of things that people would want, their needs and wants, and how they would use them. So like Martha said, as the project became separated, we really focused on what can we do now. We don't want to wait 3 or 4 years for a library, the complex to be built. What can we build now? And understanding that at some point we may need to lift and drop it to another location. So we'll go through the presentation. All right, and I won't read, I won't bring the slide. A couple of things I want to point out here. We are asking the Kiwanis for seed money tomorrow. We have a pretty good commitment, but it isn't totally formalized because we wanted to get some sort of determination from the board. We do have a board of directors in development. We are going to include educators, social service people, either on the board or as advisors. And I probably should have said this first, and I'll say this with every slide. This will not cost the school a dime. And if you look on there, the guiding principle of this project, once we determined that we were going to try to get approval for this space, we knew that we have to pay for all of it, and there can be no circumstance where the school district would be responsible for any money whatsoever. And I've got it all through the presentation because I want you to know how strongly we feel about that, and we understand we just understand that the district can't take on even the possibility of additional cost. So you see our vision to create the community center. When we talked about this last time, we talked about intergenerational programming. And this is what sets this apart from a traditional community center. There is deliberate programming to bring the different generations together in activities or interactions, just really to stimulate conversation and learning between different generations. It's being done around the country. It's a trend that's starting now. We've done a lot of research. I've been in touch with a couple of intergenerational centers now, and we're trying to do some best practices and find out what we can learn from them. It's all about deepening or strengthening the fabric of our society within this group of towns. And I think when you look, there's already some activities between the school and the seniors, and there's already something, but it's not tight enough. We want to create more, and not only bringing all the things that are together now, but then developing more. So in addition, if we get the approval to do this, we are going to pull in all the social service resources into the center. We'll talk about that in just a little bit as well. So consolidate the social service programs under one roof. I'll mention that at one point the food pantry was in scope. As we get a little further, we had determined that that wasn't appropriate in this situation for a variety of reasons, and I'll show you that in a little bit. We, working with the Family Resource Center, we have determined that they need increased capacity for the programs that they offer now. And then also additional programs specifically for the Family Resource Center. So again, we weave that stuff in together. Martha, could you, there are certain Walworth County services that we don't have here, and I've listed a couple of them up there, but you had mentioned today a bunch more that,
Yeah, and of course I didn't bring any of my notes on that, but we've had some conversations. We have a wonderfully wide community-based group of people that are very concerned about our seniors especially. They were talking about, I think Marilyn left, but she was talking about people that had approached her center, several different programs that they offer that we could incorporate in ours. Thinking of like the Big Brother, Big Sister program was one of them. And then there was one that was every month a group will come in and distribute. Do you remember what that was?
oh, that was certificates for food from farmers markets and fresh fruit, fruit and vegetables and things of that nature.
Right, and they try as much as they can to go to a variety of communities. We don't have a place in East Troy to do that, so our people have to go to Walworth over to where they're given out. But that was one of the things she said, gee, every 2 or 3 months when we do this, we just would call up and say, hey, can we set up in the community center, and then there would be a local place. There's just so many things that are done that are not localized here because we don't have a place for them. And our big entity that we're real excited about thinking they could join us is going to be Marilyn and her group with the East Troy Family and Consumer Resource Center. They have space for what they do, but are limited because they'd like to do more. And again, we can help with that because we will have that kind of space. One other program that I didn't even know existed, that's one of the things once you get started in this, there's a program called Wall-to-Wall Transportation in Walworth County, and you can get a voucher as a senior. It's fine if you live in a place that has the transportation. The Heritage has a place that will transport or things like that, but Wall-to-Wall provides vouchers for people that it will come to their home and pick them up and take them where they need to go and then get them back home for this voucher program. And we were hoping that might be something we could run in town for our seniors rather than having them have to deal with Walworth. Not that they can.
There were a lot of things.
Lots of things, yeah. As I said, I'm sorry, I
just
just didn't realize that we were going to get into all that detail.
Yeah.
But lots of things.
So you'll see we've listed additional senior programs and activities, intergenerational programs, some career help in terms of the space they could do their resume and counseling and mock interviews and things of that nature. You know, you have moms come in for the Family Resource Center, and it would just be a nice one-stop area for them to work on their resume or things like that. Okay.
Let me just put in one quick thing. I think the thing that excites me most about this is when we talk about intergenerational, we're not just talking about a center that will have a place for little kids and high school kids and seniors. We're talking about activities that put those things together. And I think that's something that to me is real exciting. I remember years ago when I came to town looking at, and I don't know even what program it was, but elderly people were taking little kids around Walmart to do shopping so that the little kids could buy stuff for their parents without their parents knowing what it was. I don't even know who was doing that, if it was the nursing home or what, but that's the kind of thing to me that's really exciting, is to get the groups together doing things. Our high school has done for years the senior prom, when the high school kids go to the nursing home, and that's been, are they still doing that?
Dave?
Still do senior prom? Does National Honor Society still do senior prom?
We did last year, yeah.
Okay, well, that's the kind of thing where you actually are programmed to bring those age groups together. So, all right, I'm sorry.
And when we did the research, and as Martha and I have talked to people and briefly talked to people about it, the intergenerational component is what grabs everybody. And I think a community center is valued, but when you deliberately try to put this programming to really improve the lives of residents of the community, we feel that it's pretty important. A lot of the feedback we have gotten has been just enthusiastic over the top. And we haven't even begun to get started with telling people. So, next slide. All right, so our proposal to lease some of the vacant space at Dobeck We will pay the lease rate in accordance with the existing district usage charges. So what you charge for space here in this building or at the middle school or any of the district properties, we will pay that price. So therefore, it's consistent with your policy already. We're not asking for anything for free.
But understand that you have a tiered system, and so part of what we're working on is to try to get a tiered system so that when we have the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, they're not gonna, we're kind of trying to average out so we can come up with a monthly lease that recognizes your system. Okay.
And following that premise, the community organizations, we would never charge a community organization, the Scouts or anything like that, to use the space. We're going to actively solicit them to use the space because they can have an element of customization. They can have storage. They don't have to be pulling their stuff in and out, here at the school, and really some customization. We would never make them pay. But like your policy with the district, if it's a fundraising activity or external, if we could rent the big room for like corporate meetings, things like that, we will be charging them for the usage of the space. So, but for the community, really everything we're trying to do, even the programs, as zero cost as possible. We'd make the whole thing free if we could, Okay, so, and then the third point, the understanding we may need to relinquish the space. In talking with Chris and Kathy, and we've had many discussions over the course of the last couple of weeks, we understand that there potentially is a demand for an additional program here at the district, and that's where it would have to go. So based on that conversation, we went back and we looked at our drawing, and we looked at our plan, and we modified the plan. At one point, we were going to have the food pantry in this space as well, and that would be the full social services. But understanding that the district may need this space back, we've taken the food pantry out of scope because it's not a lift and drop with the food pantry like it is with everything else we're doing. And we've already given back some of the space that initially we were going to try to lease. And we understand that programs may come up. It may be a couple of years from now. I assume it's more than a year's notice that we would have. And I keep talking about lift and drop. We would hope that we could leave this here. We would hope that the space exists, that once we establish this, it would stay here. However, we're fully prepared to lift and drop into whatever develops with the new library.
The one exception is the East Trade Family and Consumer Resource Center. As much as possible, we want to be able to guarantee them that they have that space, because it's really difficult for them to keep moving around. And that is, again, that would still leave a good large portion. But anyway, that's what we're working on.
Yeah. All expenses assumed by us. I keep putting that in all the slides. The lease draft by council, the lease itself, the staff, space customization, utilities, maintenance, liability insurance. We've done research on all of those components, and we know that we can absorb the cost. There would be no cost or labor usage of district resources. All right, this is the cool part. So we took an existing blueprint and kind of played with it a little bit, and you'll see the areas that we want to lease. And you notice up at the top, the Family Resource Center would have the largest room up there. We would put kind of a game collaboration room next to it. We have another room over to the side for meetings. That would be community meetings, business meetings, birthday parties for little kids. Oh, and let me say this, obviously in accordance with the district, this is absolutely a no alcohol space. So even when we go out and try to solicit people to have events there, it's strictly no alcohol. So you could see our drawing and what we'd like to do. At one point, we were going to take this space as well, but then based off of the conversation with Chris, we understand, you know, the potential for you to use that space. And then if some of these programs come to fruition, you'd be looking for 2 of those spots. So we'd be fully prepared to move out of there and, you know, turn the game room into a meeting room. We have all kinds of flexibility on what we're doing. The big common space is really terrific because that allows the Family Resource Center to you know, kind of spill out into that room. There's a lot of activities we can have in that room. It really, you couldn't pick a better space for us. These smaller offices, we've got the 2 restrooms right there, the kitchen, craft room with the sink in it for the Family Resource Center with the kids. That's always been important. We've got a couple other little like private offices that we could use for, you know, career type of activities. So this is what we want. Next slide. All right, so this is the important part, the money. We've met with a professional fundraising firm already. We anticipate we're going to need about $200,000, which would not only get the space customized to what we need, but that would give us a couple of years of operating funds. The intent is to always to stay a year or 2 ahead of our current in terms of operating funds. So, and we're going to really try it from a different angle. We're going to try the online and crowdfunding. The firm that we've met with, they've got a platform with payment processing, linking it up with social media, Twitter, Facebook, all this kind of stuff. So not only are we going to try to collect money in the traditional ways, those who own businesses, we're going to be on your doorstep, but then we're really going to try to take this really grassroots. It's a new generation. They, you know, people, you know, 40, 45 below. I mean, the technology is the big thing. And we're going to reach outside of East Troy because I think we have a compelling story. I've seen other crowdfunding efforts for similar types of things. And, you know, you get $5 from 1,000 people. I mean, we're going to raise money every way we can. No bake sales, no golf outings or anything like that. We really want to do it differently. We're going to have potentially a couple fundraising drives every year, large ones, and in addition, we're going to try to rent out some of the space. That won't bring us very much revenue, but you know, it might be enough to pay the electricity. And of course, we're looking for sponsorships with local business and government. We feel that there are opportunities out there potentially to get some grants for in the future. We've looked at a couple that seem kind of promising, but they take time. So we will get the money. And we feel very confident. We've had a couple of meetings with the fundraising organization, which, by the way, works for Mary Nickerson, uses that same organization, I believe, for Troy. So it's a great place. We're also going to sell, you know, naming rights. There's all kinds of ideas, you know, a tree and you buy the leaves, and we have a lot of ideas about sponsorship, visible sponsorship for organizations. So we're here to ask if we can create the lease, working with your attorneys, with the hope to open the center on September 1st. If it was up to me, we'd probably be open in July, but I'm being cautioned, patience, and we need to get, if we get your approval, our next step is to start raising money. So we can guarantee the funding. I understand that's critically important, and I can't stress that enough. Our concept is in alignment with your board's concept of the partnership, developing partnerships, community development, things of that nature. So, you know, talk about the partnership between the community center and the school district. I mean, it really brings everyone closer together. And that also, we will operate full accordance with district standards. We wouldn't do anything to the property without talking to Bob or getting approval from you. You know what I'm saying? So while we may be paying for it independently, we realize that the four walls and the space belong to you. And we would do everything in concert with your practices, including purchase order practices. You have a purchase order policy, so when we customize the space, we'd be working with Bob and the facilities group, and we would make sure that the purchase order is paid in advance and things of that nature. We had thought this thing through every single angle, trying to make sure we can meet the demands of the community and what our vision is, but also to make sure that it doesn't put you guys in any sort of a negative position. And I think we've hit it, but you're going to tell us in a minute. The part that's blocked off talks about the purchase order process. So I think that's the last page.
Yes. Any questions?
I guess more for administration is how does this space get split off from what the district's using for security and everything else, especially in that area where it looks like you want to keep a couple of the rooms, and right now it's all in the common corridors.
Could you put the picture back up, please? We'll put a door right here. Bob uses these for storage already, and there's a natural spot right outside the bathrooms that leads into that long hall. We could put a door with a key card system, fully secure the space.
Okay, that's what Bob had mentioned, would be obviously, and the cost, as Lloyd mentioned, would be covered by them, so that would be a customization, but we would do basically a fob key system there, as we have internally and externally throughout our buildings. So only proper access could get in and out of that area, but at least they would have access in and out. And then for his storage with the garage units and everything that we put in, he already has access to.
What if you ever want to use those spaces for something besides storage?
That was the key in which Lloyd and Martha were talking about, and that is, we had shared a few of our thoughts and ideas of what we might be doing in that area ultimately down the road. Nothing next month for sure, or in the months to come. And that is where the agreement on, we said it, that if you guys had agreed to the leasing for the crafting of the lease, would be we want verbiage in there in regards to which they already alluded to, and that is that flexibility. That obviously, if with proper notice and proper time, which we work out what that proper word is, that we may need to use an additional room or the whole area in time. But at this time, right now, we're not using it due to the fact we don't have that need, and where there's a lot of work to be done in regards to what we may elect ultimately to be able to use that for. And that might be tied to whether or not, do we have additional state funding to assist at some time, or this or that from a, birth to 3 or 4K and those type of things. So those are all not even in the idea conversation yet. So that was a big thing, I think, when we first met. They shared their ideas. We've gone through a lot, and we met again. And one of the things that we had to cautiously approach with them, because we didn't know how it would be viewed, and I appreciate their flexibility, was we may need that space, and we're going to need to have to provide some language in regards to that at some point in time. Hence why what Martha and Lloyd alluded to was that changed their scope too, when they heard that in regards to what could be as lifted and dropped, and due to the fact we had said too, right, that they did not mention it, right, we do not know what will happen to the property of Chester Burns and what will go in there, and then what the access, to our building, and whether or not, where will be an access point to Dobeck possibly, right? All those things are unknown. So if it was going to be needed for, such as the food pantry at one time, and there are other venues and things that we didn't want to, but if the food pantry was going to be in there, well, that could result in them not having access to that back area at that point in time, and that could result in what? Months or a year, all of a sudden they're having to move again. So that ended that discussion at this time. At that point.
What about utilities? How would that be handled? You had mentioned paying for the electricity for that area. I mean, is not separately metered now, so is it just gonna be a per square foot type rate, or?
That was discussed too. Can you allude on that a little? I mean, I think that's where we went into that, the facility fee.
I'm trying to remember, I don't think we landed on a firm.
No, we didn't.
This way yet.
I think
You looked at what we were paying for, what you were paying in a year for.
Or what we assumed was 2/3 of the
Of the
building.
building, and then figured we'd be heating the other third,
Mhm.
or whatever, and so it was kind of wasn't an exact meter.
Right.
But we were.
Bob indicated we could put meters in. I don't know
Pricey.
if that's the
That's
best
what he
use
was
of
concerned.
Yeah.
funds.
I don't know if it's worth the expense, Tim.
It'd be relatively easy to divide by the square footage.
Yeah.
We've
And-
had about 4 different methods we were tossing around, but nothing was decided yet.
Sure.
And we could do a true up, you know, as the bills come in or at the end of the year, if we haven't paid enough, then, you know, once a year we could do a true up and pay the rest of that money if that's the case.
And I think what Lloyd is referring to there, we were talking about the difference over, say, November versus this November. Because it's not perfect, because again, you could have a warmer, colder November, but you could say, again, one of the methods we were thinking was, what did last November cost, what does this November cost, and they pay the difference.
Believe me, it won't be toasty in there.
Sure.
What kind of lease price is there on a space like that?
Well, again, we haven't come to all the numbers at all, Tony, so, well, we've had a lot of different ideas of how that could be done, but that's what we're saying is we would look at our current facility usage. And one of the things we gotta work out, which I think Lloyd and Martha will kind of look at, roughly, right, the first year, or first months or year would have to be a snapshot of what they project, not from a cost, but from a use. Meaning like, who do they believe will be using it? And then we'd have to go back and do a review and an audit of that on an actual to determine whether or not is that portraying to the truth of the projection from a standpoint. If it's a nonprofit group that's in there, then that's obviously going to be a different facility charge too than a profit group that would be renting it out from them. So those things would all have to be worked out in detail. The biggest things that we stated, which they have assured and the lease would assure, I mean, the contract of the lease would assure, and that is no cost to the district. We are not going to incur costs. The things that have to be done have to be approved first by Bob and administration, if they were to do a customization at all to it. And if approved, those are still going to be covered by AVID. Sorry, I just used that acronym on you, but, all right, the Intergenerational East Troy. It would be those things, so. That's the biggest thing is, so we wanted to know exactly what's the usage gonna be, which they have explained tonight very well. And then, okay, at no cost will it be ever to the district, no matter where this goes and everything. And then we have to constantly go back and make sure that, you know, what the alleged usage is being done for their sake too, in regards to what they're being charged for that usage fee.
We will be manually tracking. We're going to have someone in the center at all hours when we're open. So it'll be relatively easy to manually track who comes in or what they're using it for. We could develop a system like this. We also, part of our goal, why we're trying to raise so much money, is that you have the assurance that we've got the money to operate for a couple of years. So you're not blindsided, you know, next year when we can't raise any money. So that was our intent. And additionally, we are offering financial oversight to the district. Look at our books, put someone on the board. I mean, anything at all that would give you a level of comfort that there would be no risk or financial expense.
Something, right, you saw on there too, would be through their insurance, right? So they have their insurance success. So I think that's really important too. So all of those components.
We've got an opportunity. The space is empty right now. It's in the right location. We know that there's a need for this in the community, and it's something we could do now. It's not waiting for years and, you know, studies and meetings. I mean, we could get this going and people can benefit from this now. And we believe it would be a benefit to the school district as well, because this is something that, you know, hopefully will publicize, and as we get more involved with the intergenerational community, it sets us apart a little bit.
So we're not using the space right now? correct?
Storage and just those two areas.
Okay. And so we're not making money off of that space right now. And they're gonna fundraise $200,000, and then we have the ability to make them get out of there at a certain time after putting that much money in?
We're not putting the money.
They're not putting the 200,000 into
Just
the
want to
building.
Have that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're not putting that.
They're not, and we actually even said it, because we went through a lot of different options. And one of the things was about upgrading that area and putting money into where the district would have a cost, right? In the end, we said, look, the district's not gonna have the cost, but we were upfront too, we said, we don't want you guys to put the cost into that, into certain areas, say boiler, HVAC, all, because we said if we have to come back to you within months, not expected, but months or even a year or two, we said we don't want to see you guys invest $100,000 into that area or more, and then we're asking you to move. That's not right. And I think they appreciated that comment.
We were
so
willing
it's
to.
it's about them ensuring they have the funding to continue to utilize that area. Yes.
But
We
they
had-
will be doing quite a bit.
We were prepared to buy the furnace at $90,000. I mean, we understood in the beginning that was a shortfall. Not having to makes this a lot better for us. If we can raise the kind of money we think we can support that for 2.5, maybe 3 years, depending on the program.
And what you're doing with the space will be an improvement to the space.
Yeah, I believe so. And I mean, nothing's going to be done that does not coincide with what we think would be an improvement to the space, that we would have to redo something later. So it should, and, it definitely would not be something that we'd go back on having to redo. No, absolutely not.
And they are going to pay for some things like, again, this door,
Yeah.
some, air conditioning in the spaces,
Yes.
so,
Wireless.
yeah.
So we have no problem with people driving back there to get to it and all that.
Right
I mean,
now,
as
we do
long as
not.
the-
Right now, we
Right
don't, but we
now-
can't
Right now, we do
guarantee.
not, but.
Right, we can't guarantee the access point after, with the selling of the Burns
So
property.
with the new
Like, you have
survey, is
access
it?
no matter what.
That's
no matter
right,
whether
we
it's gonna
will.
come out the front or the back.
That's right.
or-
People
So
may
they're
have to
all-
access go back through the front in time. You never know. I mean, we
Right.
don't know.
So the survey of is that gonna take that easement out?
It may. Again, we had that discussion in a meeting. I don't know what, the survey is gonna show about a required easement on that driveway or not. And then B, when the developer, whatever that might be, wants to purchase the land, again, whether there's an easement required or not is going to have a big turning point. But if there is no easement required, the developer may say end of driveway and you guys park in the front. Maybe, I don't know. But it's one possibility that I've thought of anyway, is that we may not have that access from the back forever.
There's one thing we checked though, if they have to park out on Beulah, the sidewalk does lead around to the back. I said, maybe we can even just paint another white strip down and say this is the way to get to the center or something if we don't have that ability to get from the back side.
Depends, you got extra parking.
We'd like to put up some signage. It has to be identifiable from the front and the back. We don't know any more than that, and so of
Well,
course
let's
we
see what
work.
the village requirements are for signs.
Chris, is there any financial benefit to the district?
Any financial benefit?
Yeah.
Well, we're not trying to necessarily gain, but we know we're not going to incur costs. That's the key. Could there be a financial benefit? Yeah, I would say there could be. I mean, due to the fact, from the standpoint, we're not receiving anything for that space usage right now, and nobody's showing an interest in asking for a facility usage of that. So we have a group that's interested from a partnership, intergenerationally strong, to utilize some space that's not being used right now. So besides not ensuring we won't incur costs, maybe.
But we're also
Frankly,
gonna
I would
incur
not-
wear and tear on all the equipment, our heating system, cooling system,
Yes.
all that stuff is going to be
Yeah.
funded by the district.
Yep.
That's the part that bothers me.
I would prefer that I get some guidance actually on whether we make this no cost usage only or whether we do incur some sort of charge that is above and beyond bond usage, I would like that direction.
Right, that's where I'm getting at, because this does not fall into our district goals, 6 district goals, right?
Well, I think it does from a standpoint of, you know, when we're saying, you could look at it from a standpoint, I guess you would have to ask yourself, is it efficiency and effectiveness on the fiscal responsibility? Not incurring, the way you're looking at it from a standpoint of saying, yes, but it could lead to other expenses because of the usage.
Not could.
I also think, though, that you could look at it from a standpoint of, you know, the partnerships. So are you meeting partnerships? You might say, well, where's partnerships in our district goals? I think we tried to develop partnerships a lot, so I think that's why this has been entertaining by us to know whether or not would there be, and assisting another generation through an area that seems to be struggling to find an area that we just aren't utilizing right now.
Well, and I do think, Steve, for example, we expect to pay a lease each month to cover the cost of the heat and stuff. Now, if furnace breaks down,
Right, well, that's what I'm getting at. Well, we have to look out for the best interests of the district and the students. I mean, our goal, our job is to educate children, right? And if this is going to cost the district money, and that maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, in new heating system, you know, and how do we prorate part of that to you guys? Because you're using it for a month, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years?
well, your heating
We don't know.
system is working already.
Right, but you're also going to be utilizing it, it's going to be working harder.
Is it? I thought
Right.
I thought you were keeping
It's being heated
hot
now.
water through the
Right.
boilers and all of that.
Still going to have to work harder to do the additional space. And I don't want the taxpayers to have to pay more money for something that they're not getting compensated for.
What are you
That's
heating that space to now? Because it's all one system that's
Yeah,
heating the entire
it is one
building.
system.
In the rear though, in this area, we are not heating it to
That's right.
68 degrees. We are heating it, I could not tell you the temperature, but it's
it's
something that
colder.
the pipes generate.
Yeah, it's colder. But yes, it's one system, but it's lower in the back.
So the boiler's running no matter what, so the only wear would be the extra pumps to feed the water to that area when it turns on.
But you would be heating more water because it's going in a bigger area.
Right.
So therefore it's working harder.
So
Heating
you
more water.
put a premium on what we pay for utilities to accommodate that.
Well, that's what, all I'm trying to get to is, because you say no cost to the district, but there's also a cost of wear and tear on equipment that you should not have to pay a large percentage of that, but there should be something in addition coming to the district for the future replacement of those items. That's all I'm getting.
The lease, our monthly rent payment wouldn't cover
Well, that's
that?
what I was asking, is there a financial benefit to this? And I got the answer that, no, we're not getting, there's
Well, we're
going to
gonna
be
pay every month a
no.
lease
That's why I
and
just
a-
asked, and I was told,
Oh,
there's no
no,
financial
that's what we're trying to determine.
Well, yeah, I didn't say no, Steve. What I said is I can't tell you there's going to be a financial benefit because I know the one thing I can tell you is we're not going to incur a cost, but I don't know if we will gain a benefit from a standpoint of what you're looking for, from a revenue standpoint, to offset those.
well, I think
I mean, but that could be, I mean, I need Bob in that discussion to determine, okay, so what would be a reasonable monthly cost if, you know, there would be a future, you know, need to replace them.
I think a typical facilities charge is meant to cover that type of thing. That's why you're charging someone, right?
Our facility use policy right now has no charge for student-related activities. You know, if it's a kid and it's a youth basketball practice, there's no charge. Then layer 2 is there's a charge for adult usage and youth activities to which a entrance fee is charged. And then layer 3 is if it's like a private entity that wants to come in here and run their karate lessons out of here. That's what the tiered system is.
so where would they fall?
So, that's interesting because again, intergenerational, if they're doing something that is a youth activity, for those hours, they might be free. If they're purely doing senior bingo, for those hours, there might be a level 2 charge, is what we were again discussing. To make their group completely level 2 for all the hours, it would be not, I don't believe, I speak for you.
It's not cost effective.
That's not, they would not be able to handle that charge.
So the vast majority of the time, there would be no usage charge.
So that is up to their analysis again of what are they going to do, which we don't have yet, but how many of their activities, what they were talking about, like keeping track of who's entering, how many of their activities are youth related versus how many of their activities are purely adult related. Again, if we went by the way our policy reads now.
See, we anticipate, for example, that the heavy usage during the day would be by seniors. You know, we have a game room, we have the idea of things that we want to put in there. Whereas like the meeting rooms and things at night, that what we're hoping is that would be something with scouts, maybe a 4-H, you know, whatever we could offer. And the difference between the school, you're not getting any money from them anyway, and we can offer them a place where they can put their flags out and keep them, you know, have a storage space for what they bring in instead of having to cart it out each time. I mean, again, we have a lot of ideas, but until you actually get in. And I just understand that our goal is not to cost you guys money. If at the end of the year we're upping, and it's upping more than what we were able to raise, then we're gonna have to talk, maybe change what we do, or I don't, until we get in there and get started and we're just kind of spitting in the wind right now to see what might be possible. I know that because we've already, we talked to Teresa, because she seems to have a real handle on programs and things through the county. There are lots of things that go on over in Elkhorn that they would be willing to do out of our center for our citizens. And I'm not sure that a charge, other than making sure the space is heated and stuff, if nobody's making any money on this, is that hoping even though they might be adults, they're falling under your free idea of anybody that's going to come in and say, I want to rent this space. One of the things that I've come to realize is that when you say to them, you understand that there will be no alcohol at any of your events, I get this kind of look on some people's faces, like, an adult birthday party, this is not the place for it. If you want to, I think a kid's birthday party, you could probably handle a couple hours without having a cocktail. It's not going to happen because we don't allow it at school.
So there will be a monthly lease payment. We don't know exactly what it'll be yet. It'll be some number based on so many hours of kids, so many hours of adults, just to be determined yet. But that, I would think that lease payment, whatever it is, would cover future maintenance items to a certain degree, because but we have no idea of knowing. We don't know what a future maintenance item may be or may not be.
Well, and if you're, again, part of all of this was to get permission to start working on a lease here, cover yourselves, in the lease, and if we don't think it's gonna work for us, we'll let you know. We don't want to cost money.
I do think what Ted said though is, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but whatever the lease agreement ends up coming out to, it is to cover, I think, the cost that'll be getting associated to that is the facility usage of the leasing of that area. So it's going to cover the use of that, whether it be for the wear and tear of equipment to a degree. In a way, indirectly, it's covering those costs, even though, 4 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, we have to replace a system there, right? Yes, I get it, the wear and tear. Did it maybe have to get replaced more at an earlier stage, more frequently because of the use by AVID in the area? Maybe so, but they also have been paying for that area. They're not receiving that area for free. They're going to be paying for the area, and it's one system. So to say that they expedited that process, it's one system. We would have to replace it anyways. I mean, it's our system. It's the building system. So I think the key is, I think would be more of a concern saying, oh, and I've never heard that today, I never heard it in any of their early presentations, we're asking for this for free. No, never heard that, never heard it from them. I think what they're saying is, can we use this space for these reasons and use it reasonably? And if in the end, it can't be given to us reasonably after we get through the lease, then we may have to bail out on you anyways before we ever begin the process. Okay. And we might have to do a few things, and if we do, we'll need your prior approval always first, and then we will cover the costs, and we'll show you we have the coverage first before we ever ask for, begin doing any type of customization. So, Steve, I agree with you. I was trying to wrap my head around it, but I agree on the equipment use, and I agree with the usage of it and the wear and tear. I totally get it. I do think some of that leasing of the facility agreement, it's just a matter of figuring out what's reasonable based upon what they're going to use it for, with profit, non-profit, is for that indirectly. I'm not saying that'll cover, let's say, 6 months from now, something
No,
goes
but
down, right?
if they're-
It would not cover that. Nor would I expect them to have to cover that 90,000 to 100,000 because most of that wear and tear is by us.
And has been.
It has been, yes. Yep.
We have, we're prepared to replace the air conditioning units in the rooms. We have the budget estimate to bring the wireless back. The wireless points are there, but not the cabling and routing. So there are some improvements that we would make that would benefit the district when we left. And in terms of customization, we're talking paint. You know, we're not gonna really change anything, put the door in and some paint. So if we left, you'd still have the air conditioners, the wireless.
No, hey. It's a good question, Steve. Sorry, I didn't know where you're going with it at first, but it's a very good question. But that's, after having the discussion, I think that's.
So tonight, we're looking for a motion to write up
What they're looking for is, a motion of the board, whether or not, are you okay with approving, moving forward with legal counsel, which is covered by them. It'll be through our legal counsel, but they will cover the cost of that in regards to drafting a lease agreement.
And that lease will come back to the board.
It could, I mean, if you wanted to.
Part of our problem is we've got
Yeah. They wanna get
a
moving on
bunch
the
of stuff
fundraising.
ready to pull the plug and
So
say,
they don't
let's
wanna,
go,
yeah.
but we don't want to do any of that until we know that you're
Yeah.
okay with this. So, as soon as you can give us and say, hey, yeah, we'd like you to, we give you our permission to get started on this. We've got 513Cs in the offing, we've got fundraisers going, we've got all kinds of things that we would like to
Yeah.
start, but we've been very respectful of the fact we don't really have the facility yet, so.
I think if you approve the lease, what you're saying is, look, we'll make sure to embed every one of those components into that lease agreement that was done tonight. And if there's something that you don't like, or that you think's missing on what was the presentation, and you're like, I would vote yes, but this needs to also be in the lease agreement, then that would be,
Yeah,
should
we
be
can bring
done
it back,
tonight.
we
Yeah.
just, as long as you're okay with us getting started on things.
Yep.
Give them a shot.
No matter what you want, we're gonna agree to it. So.
Boy, that's a really big window. And I will tell you, we came from an ad hoc meeting earlier. We have a couple things that we are in need of.
We want this really bad, and I think the community wants it, and we can make this work. We can make it work now.
I'll make a motion to approve the creation of a lease with intergenerational lease choice for the use of an interest-based facility building.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Move
you,
forward.
thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Good luck, you guys. And then Martha and Lloyd will just, obviously, you guys are gonna start moving on the process, but we'll work through the lease with Sheena then.
And frankly, I want them all to agree with it,
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more on that. So, but we'll get all those components, as we've already discussed, embedded in this. So we'll figure out a piece.
Well, you know my number.
Yeah.
I know yours.
Thanks.
Thanks so much,
All right,
guys.
thank you.
So let me ask you, was it nicer being on that side?
You know, I'll tell you, not really. As I'm watching these artists come up, I'm thinking, there's some really neat things about being on the board, you know? I miss that. But you're
Thanks
doing a
again.
great job, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd.
Thank you. Thanks to the board.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Deb.
All right, next item, WIAA membership renewal.
This is just an annual thing that we do each and every year, that we need board approval to be able to tell the WIA, and that's the 1920 membership renewal. There is actually no membership fee any longer to the WIA, so it's just literally a board approval to say that East Troy is going to elect to be the WIA.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
Discussion?
Is there ever any, like, choice? Anywhere?
Oh, no.
I know.
If you chose not to be a part of it, you could, but then you're saying that they're not going to be involved in any of the WIA tournaments. And
Right.
you may have a few people come to the
Right.
board meeting.
No, I mean, not just, I mean, like, do states have, like, schools have a choice ever in that? Or is there always their states thing? I just always wondered that.
There's not an option to go somewhere else.
Right.
All right, all in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
At
carries.
least they go start early.
Yeah.
Approval, East Troy School Board meeting dates for the 1920 school year.
Yeah, so I provided the preliminary dates for you with the annual meeting that was approved. The annual meeting is the only one on there. Absolutely, that could not be changed, obviously, because we approved it last year at the annual meeting. All the other ones are optional dates for you, but if they work, these are the dates that we're recommending at this time, based upon kind of when we need to have the board meetings. I mean, obviously, once per month. But in August, we always go with 2. Board meeting can be canceled if you don't need it, but usually we don't cancel a board meeting. What I say is, look, we have every other month, one a month on there, with the idea that we always call a special meeting when needed.
I know Bob sent an email about the 5th, but I don't know if we can change it because he was going on the 12th also, so
Yeah.
it'd be tough to have 2 meetings.
Yeah, and the August is kind of, I know there's a different separation on the 5th and 26th, but there's a rationale to that with all the hiring and everything that goes on at that time. In regards to April 20th, that is the 3rd Monday, so for the swearing in of the elected officials, so that's an alignment.
Do we need one at the beginning of the April as well?
We used to have one in the beginning of April, and we could do that again. We elected and said, look, that usually always was about the budget, and we said if we need one, we could do a special meeting. The only other thing I'd like to point out, and Trace, I'll give you a copy of this, and it'll be on the website. But the one thing I do want to point out is they're all at 6 like we have now in our policy for the start time. But is in October, November, and December, we're rotating throughout the buildings. So if this were to be approved by the board, October would be in Little Prairie, November, Prairie View, and December, East Troy Middle School. Due to the fact we thought it would be good to have community and in the board to go off into the other buildings and have we used to do that a few years ago, the board agendas and everything. And then what we would do is, whichever board members are available, we could start the meeting at like 5:40, and each building principal would give a tour of the building and just kind of talk about what's going on in the building.
Cool.
Great idea.
Is that going to be in the libraries of each of those buildings then as well?
You know, Jess, that's a really good question. We probably haven't decided where it would be, so we'll post it accordingly. But I wouldn't mind having it in some of the other areas, which I think would be great.
Comments area.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, but we'll post it. Great question.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting dates for the 1920 school year.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. High school AVID presentation.
AVID. So over the last couple of months, I've been kind of getting reports to keep you informed of what's happening to focus on teaching and learning. So if you remember 2 months ago, we talked about the assessment continuum and the work that our teachers have been doing with that. Last month, we talked about trimesters and the work that we've done with our secondary staff to prepare for those longer blocks of time. And AVID Secondary fits right into that. So AVID Secondary is a program that is coming into the high school next year. to support the practices in teaching and learning. AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. It's currently in more than 4,000 schools in 45 states. In the state of Wisconsin, we are joining districts like Elkhorn Area High School has it, the Waukesha High Schools, Elmbrook, Muskego, Norway, Mequon-Thiensville, Madison Metropolitan Schools, and Menominee Falls. You remember when we talked about visiting schools for the trimester, we talked about both Mequon-Thiensville and Elkhorn, and they just happened to have AVID as well. So we kind of learned a lot while we were there. So the agenda for this presentation, go ahead, Kat. Yeah, we're going to talk about 3 different areas. What necessarily is AVID? What specifically is it? How does it work? And why? Well, how is it going to be advantageous to our teachers and our students? So I think nearly everyone can remember a teacher who has ignited a passion or opened your eyes to something, or you remember very positively. And most teachers enter the profession because they want to be that inspiration. So AVID is dedicated to making that happen and to filling the schools and the classrooms with teachers that provide inspirational instruction. So what exactly is it? It provides 3 different areas. It focuses on 3 different areas. Kathy, you can, yeah, thanks. Those 3 areas are, it provides professional learning, resources that drive transformation of instruction, and continuous feedback and follow-up. So just to talk a little bit about that. Professional learning includes practical, proven tools and strategies that support our content areas. So we're not bringing in content, we're bringing instructional practices in. Topics might include culturally relevant teaching practices, essential academic skills, college readiness, increasing student success, teaching and learning in the digital age. Resources might include resources that could transform both teaching and learning. That might be in the form of lesson plans to support content. That might be in the form of professional books and videos. And feedback and follow-up, we talk about feedback a lot for our students and how important feedback is continuously, we talked about not in autopsy, but as we're going through. The same is true for our teachers and their practices. We have to continue to provide feedback about what's happening. So it's ongoing coaching, and it's using data to guide instruction and determine the results of how effective the instruction is. So those are the 3 big areas that AVID brings in. We'll dig into each one a little bit. So if we look at professional learning on the next slide, it starts with the Summer Institute. So essentially, we have a team of 9 people that are going to go to the Summer Institute to learn about AVID practices. Those people range from administration, so Stacy and Kevin are going, I'm going, the coordinator of secondary teaching and learning is going, content area representatives are going, so science, math, world language, we have the showcase going. At the Summer Institute, there are individual trainings. So there's a training for administration, there's a training for me, there's a training for content area teachers. So you go to these individual trainings and you're learning about your tools that can support your content, and then there's site team planning. So after your training, you come together and how does it mesh all together? In addition to the Summer Institute, throughout the year, there are regional trainings, showcases, networking opportunities. So essentially, you work in collaboration with the districts around you. So those districts that I named, we would be working with them to learn more about best practices for our students. Resources that are available. There's curriculum support. Like I said, this is not content. So there is support for content. What strategies can we use to deliver the content? AVID Weekly provides articles that support teaching and learning practices, so the newest research and strategies. Professional learning modules are online professional development that can be accessed by our teachers 24/7. So they get to choose areas of interest, things that perhaps they set a goal that they want to improve instructionally. They can do this online professional development. And then online or ongoing learning is the workshops, the site visits, the networking with other AVID schools. And then finally, the feedback and the follow-up. So there is an instrument that they use. It's referred to as the coaching and certification instrument, and it's a tool that actually monitors and guides your implementation of the AVID practices that you learn about. It measures access to rigorous classes. Part of AVID, which I will get into, is making rigorous classes accessible to those who may not normally take them. It's understanding the impact of implementation school-wide, so what is it doing to benefit our students? And it provides us with a focus for coaching. So are there areas that our teachers are mastering, and there are areas that our teachers maybe need additional support in, and so that we can provide that. So that's what AVID is. So how does it work? So basically it's designed to transform the classroom by focusing on 3 different areas. The first one is rigor. And so AVID is dedicated to strategies that increase access to rigorous coursework by students that may not typically take it. It focuses on equitable access. Secondly is relevance. So it's student-centered learning that is relevant for today's global workforce. So we get our college and career readiness in there. And lastly, it's based on relationships. So part of AVID is strategies that build relationships between staff and students that positively enrich our community of learners. We know research shows when there's a positive relationship between staff and students, learning occurs at higher rates. So it's fostering that. So how do we make all that work? That seems great. Those 3 R's seem super, but how do we make it work? So the key strategies that AVID will bring in are equity, teacher effectiveness, leadership, and student learning. So if we focus on equity, there's just a quote. Go ahead, Kat. So it does what the federal government and most state governments fail to do. What they do is tell us to raise the bar and meet the standards. What they don't do is explain how. AVID does the how. AVID shows us what it takes to actually close those gaps to make it possible for greater numbers of students to be successful and to pursue opportunities using education to change and improve their lives. So like I said, our standards are not changing. It's not content-based. It's how do we get kids to achieve. So if we think about equity, we focus on that a lot. We look at equity when our scores come back. We look at equity with simple things as to male-female ratio in tech ed. We look at equity into what kind of demographics are represented in our AP courses, things like that. So, Kathy, you can go to the next slide. So, AVID's going to help us to uncover and inform by monitoring rigorous coursework, the composition of those classes. It uses senior college data, and we compile all this data to support our district goals. So it will align with what we're trying to do as a district. Equity, we talk about in high expectations. Should we have the same expectations for all students? So AVID teaches students to develop communication skills and to work on self-advocacy skills. And it brings in strategies that you'll often hear referred to as WICR. And WICR stands for writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. So it really focuses on those skills, which will take students into college and career readiness. And then lastly, it allows our students to recognize and connect what they're learning within culturally relevant classrooms, and it makes practical connections. We're living in a changing world and a changing society with lots of diversity, and how do we work within that setting? So, essentially, AVID is going to be strategies that our teachers take on, adopt. And so you'll see pieces of AVID within every class. So much like we talked about those non-negotiables last month with the purposeful movement and the collaboration and the communication. So the strategies that AVID will support and teach align directly with those. But what does it mean for our kids? So there is an AVID elective class. And that is designed, it's a 1 period per day, and it's designed to give kids academic, social, and emotional support needed to succeed in rigorous courses. So for example, the idea with AVID is that you focus on the middle. So if you think about RTI, we talk about RTI and our RTI system and how we provide interventions to students who might be struggling, right? We try to fill those gaps. And on the opposite end of the spectrum of RTI, we provide extensions to students who have already mastered grade level standards and are ready to go on. But there's this academic middle. And some of the kids in the academic middle are quite interesting because they may score pretty high on standardized tests, but their grades don't always align with that. And so that's kind of interesting. Why? And statistically, those students don't always take the rigorous coursework, okay? So it's how do we support them to do so? And that's where the AVID elective comes in. And so a student who takes the AVID elective would use that time to work on their coursework. So like I said, it's not additional content. They're bringing in the content of their rigorous coursework, and they're getting support academically, socially, and emotionally to support them as they find success in those classes. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And they get credit for that?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so it's going to support that academic middle, and it often supports underrepresented backgrounds within those rigorous courses. That could be low socioeconomic status. That could be families whose student may be a first-time college for the family. It could be students who are in our ELL, any number of those groups. Okay, so if we look at some research about AVID that's happened nationally, this is from 2017. So AVID courses nationally included 86% of underrepresented students, mostly with race and ethnicity. 75% low socioeconomic status background, and 56% parents have no college experience. So it's really targeting groups that may not normally be on a track for accelerated coursework. Okay, so equity is the first component. The second component is teacher effectiveness, and we're always talking about teacher effectiveness. I mean, we talk about that with the evaluation process. We really try to make teacher effectiveness meaningful for our teachers, not just I'm going to show up in your classroom and surprise you and hope you do everything right kind of a thing, but more of a reflective dialogue. What did you do? How did it work? What could you do differently? We set goals. Teachers are setting goals with students. They're setting professional practice goals. And so this aligns pretty nicely. Kat, can you go to the next slide? So this quote is from Brett Bowers, who is principal at Mequon Thiensville. And he actually visited our high school and introduced much of AVID, of what he's experienced and what his staff has experienced, to our teachers. And they were super excited after that. So his quote regarding effectiveness: you go to an AVID training, you just become a better teacher. But there's so much more to AVID than just instructional strategies. It's really about a belief system and cultivating a common set of values around what we think about young people, what we believe about all students, and our investment and commitment to their success, not just individually, but collectively. So, the idea of AVID is that it accelerates a teacher's natural drive to succeed. It increases student engagement, and it develops deeper connections and allows teachers to tap into what students are bringing to the classroom. These are all things that we talk about as a district. And it does that through professional learning, through resources, and through the coaching that we've talked about. So administrators will learn how to coach teachers to incorporate these strategies. So what might you see in an AVID classroom that makes it unique? So there are a few components that you could look for in an AVID classroom. The first would be a teacher as facilitator, facilitating learning. So the teacher is providing opportunities for students to investigate, communicate, explore, draw conclusions, that teacher is no longer the sage on the stage, but rather facilitating students as they interact with content. Second, it's pointing to, the number 2 is labeled, you'll see those pennants that are hanging. Those are college pennants. And just an AVID classroom reinforces a college-going culture. So what are you going to do after high school? It may be a 4-year school, it may be a 2-year school, it may be learning about the trades, but it extends that to what are your possibilities outside of high school. Third is classrooms that incorporate AVID are inquiry-based. Students learn to ask questions, they're clarifying their own thinking and the thinking of others. So that's essentially critical thinking. That's what they're learning to do, to question, to ask why, to go deeper. Fourth is higher level thinking. Focuses on the content, but it builds on thoughts and it challenges one another to think deeply. So oftentimes in an AVID classroom, you may be exploring questions that don't have just one correct answer. And 5 is a focus on reading and writing. So that is across the content. So the schools that we visited that have AVID, they're reading and writing in PE. They are reading and writing in all of their courses. So it's not something that students see like, I'm going to English, this is where I read and write. It is incorporated across all content areas. The third component is leadership, because we know that without leadership, the program is not going to be successful. Go ahead, Kath. So, this is a principal who has implemented AVID into the school. AVID has helped to explain the why we do things and the purpose of what we do each and every day for myself and for my staff. It has served as a whole system to truly change a school and the mindsets of the entire staff. Often we'll do professional development on different strategies, and the why is sometimes missing. But if people understand the why you do things, why it works, why it might be more efficient, they're more likely to try it out. And so this will help our teachers to explore that. Also, it aligns activities to strategic goals. So we have our goals as a district, and we're not abandoning them. We're just using AVID to support them. So you heard me talk about collaboration, communication, critical thinking. Those are our 5 C's. They're going to be alive and well with AVID. The coaching as well, we talked about that, coaching our staff. And the focus more on the team and not the individuals. That's important for both our staff and our students. So our staff is working together to adopt and implement practices across content areas. It's not just, this is what I do in science and this is what I do in math. A student will be able to see the similarities between the practices that are used across content areas. And we talked about the Summer Institute with that 11 people going, and that we're going to have this site team. This site team, which includes teachers, is the foundation. And so they are the leaders. They're providing consistency between grade levels, between content areas. They're reinforcing the valuable skills, strategies, and habits. So lastly, and most importantly, is the student learning. So a quote from a student involved in AVID. I'm on a new path. I'm taking honors and AP courses. I can speak in front of people and not stare at my feet. I can initiate a conversation without being shy or timid. AVID gave me the confidence boost I needed to be successful in everything that I do. So how does that happen? Well, it's a student-centered approach. Kathy, you can switch. Thank you. It's a student-centered approach. So it encourages the following: movement, communication, critical thinking, and collaboration, all just which happen to be our non-negotiables, and our 5 C's are in there. Students articulate what they don't understand, and they seek information to understand. So it was really interesting. We went to see a school, and we sat in on an AVID elective. Remember I said the elective supports the kids in their content areas. So small groups of kids were around a table with a tutor of some sort. It could, oftentimes it's a peer tutor, or it could be, they used college students that came in for some time. But they were working through math problems. and the kids were talking about the steps that they mastered, but they were able to say, this is where I got messed up. So oftentimes you'll hear a kid say, I can't do it. Well, this approach, they're identifying the 3 things that they can do or the 4 things that they can't do, but here's my sticking point. So then they know where to start with that. It was really neat to see that. The teachers are learning to facilitate learning, actually. They're learning to facilitate learning, not just deliver content. That's very different. And then lastly, it's a focus on college and career readiness. And so we're embedding college and career readiness skills throughout all areas of the content. Okay, so it sounds great, but why? Is there any data to illustrate its benefits? So we've talked about preparation for college and career and life. We've talked about addressing key strategies and needs. We talked about WICR, that writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading. Talked about how the AVID elective not only works on academic, but your social and emotional, your social skills, technology integration, but it aligns, it doesn't abandon the standards. So it includes state standards, it aligns with our AP, it aligns with our PLTW coursework, it aligns with our social emotional learning that we're working on, and the 5 C's. So if we go to the next slide, there's another quote. This is from College Access Network. So AVID students have changed the thinking of teachers who were gatekeepers to advanced classes, who didn't believe that average students deserved the opportunity or could handle the work. Such shifts in mindsets are key to creating the holy grail of college-going culture for all, not just a privileged few. So AVID really focuses on the difference between college ready versus college eligible. You could be college eligible by fulfilling your requirements. It doesn't necessarily mean you're college ready. I mean, I went to a lot of school with people who were eligible, but maybe not ready for some of the challenges that came up. And so we're providing them development of skills that will make them college ready. We'll also help students with success in the workplace, in their family life, and in social relationships. And those skills include self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, decision-making, and self-reflection. Lots of that we talked about in our assessment continuum, so there's a direct link there as well. So what's the proof? Where's the proof in the pudding? Thank you. So this is from 2017. These are national numbers. So 93% of AVID seniors completed their completed 4-year college entrance requirements. 78% took at least one course of rigor, and 30% took a college or dual enrollment course. So the AVID students are having a strong work ethic when it comes to college readiness. This is also from 2017. 9 out of every 10 AVID seniors submitted college applications, and 8 out of every 10 were accepted into their 4-year college program of choice. So I want to end with this, and then we'll kind of get into what our plan is for bringing AVID in. But this is a speaker, this is a student, an AVID student, who wanted to speak at the Summer Institute. So part of the Summer Institute involves students who are involved in AVID that speak to the teachers that are being trained, and this is his speech. Can you go, yeah. You should be able just to click right on the, go click right on the picture. On the picture. Yeah. So you can play, there you go.
It is said that there are 7 people in this world who are exactly like you. But I will completely deny that statement, starting with how people learn. I believe no 2 students learn exactly the same way, and this is how the education system has failed us. I I believe that the AVID program makes up for what I call the empty zone, a gray area between student and teacher. The AVID program not pushes only students, but teachers to set these goals and do whatever it takes to achieve them. Personally, I'm a very hands-on visual learner. Speak at me for 45 minutes and I'll pay attention, but I won't understand as much as the kid next to me. Granted, I make up for that when I study my notes through the Cornell process, but even then I am found in my empty zone. The beauty of AVID is that it pulls these students from those zones and into success. Teachers go through trainings, and even some of our students, such as our peer tutors, go through trainings to learn how to engage with and reach every kind of student. And I believe that this is the key to the learning process. Understanding the relationship between a student and a teacher to develop a way of approaching all kinds of problems. It is like the saying, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he'll eat for the rest of his life. Essentially, AVID is teaching us how to fish, and that is how the program has changed the way I am learning and the way our teachers are teaching. Growing up, I was a needy child. 6th grade year, I was living in Idaho, and I ended that year with poor grades that would not be considered passing in the state of Texas. I bounced around, was living with a mother who was mentally incapable of supporting our family. I dreamed of making wonderful grades, being surrounded by amazing people who pushed me in everything I did. I dreamed of going to college, majoring in business, and eventually one day being able to support a family of my own. I dreamed of all the good, however, I knew that these goals were not in my reach. By the time I finally ended my middle school career, I had moved 5 times across the United States into 3 different middle schools. Statistically speaking, I was a disadvantage in the education system. I entered AVID as a freshman in high school, and like so many freshmen, I thought I was the cool kid on campus and had everything figured out. I had never been more wrong. I remember our first week of school, and all we did in AVID was talk about short-term and lifelong goals. We spoke of organization and C notes, and I remember thinking, this was lame. I ended my freshman year with decent grades. I reached a few of my goals, and I thought to myself, I didn't need AVID, so I dropped it my sophomore year. I ended that year way below where I told myself I wanted and needed to be. I was lost in my empty zone. That was when I realized how much AVID had affected my life. Junior year came around and I immediately knew I needed to be back in this program. I started to notice a change throughout my high school career. Teachers were engaging with me just as much as I did with them. And I knew they wanted me to succeed, and that's how I needed my educational environment to be. At the end of my junior year, I won awards. I pushed myself in everything that I did, and my grades improved. I was inspired, so I became a peer tutor. The AVID program has changed how I view my future. I've learned that the cliche, if you want it, make it happen, was true. However, there was more to it. If you want it, you have to take it, because the guy next to you wants it just as bad. AVID taught me that not everyone has to come from the same path. Not everyone has to come from money and be shown every direction in order to be successful. It taught me that I can do whatever I set my mind to, no matter the challenge. I learned the importance of the relationship between students, peers, and teachers in the learning process. It taught me how to be organized, both in the classroom, or with a binder and classwork, or mentally when it came to time management. However, the most important thing that it taught me was the importance of C notes. And I had discovered my potential in this world, and so I was inspired. The AVID program proved to me that I can succeed. It has inspired me to tell others that they can too. I became an AVID peer tutor to help other students who struggled just like I did and discover their true potential. I use my voice to help teachers gain a different understanding of their classroom by engaging in conversation about a student's point of view in their class. And I want to inspire students the way that the AVID system and all my teachers had inspired me. Too many students are still lost in their empty zone, but it is AVID's mission to fill that void. AVID has given me the tools I needed in life to succeed in my missions. And because of AVID, I will be majoring in business economics at Stephen F. Austin State University.
So AVID will be for 9th graders next year. It's coming in just for 9th graders. And then the plan is every year to extend it. So the following year, 10th, and then 11th. But also as we're going up, we're looking to go down as well, because AVID just isn't AVID secondary. There's for middle school and eventually elementary. When you do elementary, there's not an AVID elective, it's just school-wide. Teachers are learning about the strategies, and they begin them kindergarten, first, second, third grade. We got to visit an elementary school in Mequon, Gainesville, and the students did a panel, and just to hear them talk about the strategies that they're employing, and they're already thinking college and career. I mean, they're already talking about it, and they're collaborating, they're communicating, they're doing the critical thinking in their classrooms, they're goal setting. So the idea is as we move up, we'll also move down, so it just becomes what we do. It's part of our culture here, and it just is supporting what we're all about. So that personalized learning, we talked a bit about that. That's how it's going to come to life. So to kind of talk about how we're making that happen, Kevin might want to talk to this a little bit, but we had worked with Krista Iserlof at the middle school to talk to her about what AVID is and to look at student data. Remember, I talked about that academic middle, and I talked about the kids that might be doing really well on our standardized testing but not so well in the classroom or in their grades. So we identified about 40 kids. We identified about 40 students that fit that profile, and sent a letter to parents, an invitation, and Kevin and Stacy led a parent information meeting. So they're invited to do it. It's voluntary. No one's forced. So do you want to talk a little bit about how that went?
Sure. We had, I think, about 15 families that came to the information night and got a similar presentation, and it was more directly towards the AVID elective class and what that would look like, because that would be what their son or daughter would be involved in. We talked about that they would earn elective credit. We talked about that the first year AVID elective would be all 3 trimesters, and then after that they can pick 2 out of 3, or they could do all 3 trimesters. Our focus was on that being college ready or versus college eligible. And then we talked about just kind of encouraging kids to take the rigorous courses while being supported within here. So we kind of really stressed the fact that this is something that supports the kids. It's not something that adds on to them. The universal piece that Amy touched on is, again, impacts all the freshmen. The AVID elective would be those 40 freshmen. So the reason we selected the 4 teachers in those content areas are the teachers that are most likely to have these freshman students. So we're going to try to really encourage, or through the scheduling process, try to have those teachers so that they see the strategies that they're learning in the AVID elective also being taught in the classroom. So whether it's the Cornell notes or just some of the different strategies that they'll be doing with the highlighting and the critical reading aspect, it would all be able to see in their science or their math classes as well. So we got very positive feedback from the parents. They were excited that we were offering this opportunity for kids. And I think the part they were excited about is a partnership. So the student has to want to do it along with the family to make it a match for them to participate in the class.
So those teachers that he talked about that most likely will teach freshmen, they're the ones that are going to the summer institute to learn about it. Then the following year, it would be a different group of people that would be trained, and so on and so forth. The goal is to run 2 electives, right? We have 2 teachers that are interested in running the elective, but then it happens to work in their schedule. One is a science teacher, and one is in the world language department. So you get to see those teachers in a different light. pretty excited about it.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us? That's a lot of information.
How long has it been around, program?
28 years.
Oh, really?
Yes, I just learned that today, which I
Did
was
you? Yeah.
shocked by.
That's
I looked it up because
yeah.
I thought someone would ask me that. 28 years in some form it's been around. I think, I would say the past 5 maybe, it's really taken off.
How many schools actually bring it down from the high school into the middle school and elementary levels? Like Elkhorn or
I don't know. Mequon is.
Elkhorn did.
Elkhorn.
Is, I'm not sure Waukesha.
Yeah, Waukesha hasn't yet. They're moving that way.
Okay.
I don't think Elmbrook has yet.
And generally it starts at the 9th grade level. That's what they start with, and they kind of expand from there. So they have said that sometimes it's more the secondary transition, and sometimes they incorporate it.
Yeah.
Is the middle school the elective class?
They do have,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in 2021, is that our goal to do 10th and 8th?
Yes. No, 10th would be, 2021.
Or if
But the
10th
next
and
year
8th?
would be 8th, no, 11th and 8th.
Oh,
I mean, we
So-
can make that happen
Yeah,
however,
no,
Sure.
however
Yeah.
we want. But it does take time to get
sure.
down. You don't do it all in one fell swoop because there is some training that has to happen, and we want to support. There's that coaching aspect, and we want to make sure that we're doing that right. So time is needed.
The big sell is when the teachers were observing it. There's strategies that support everything that we're doing already. So they did feel like it was another add-on program when they saw it. And when Brett came in, these are all strategies that they would like to utilize in their classroom. So
Yeah,
we're excited about it.
many of the strategies on that best practices align perfectly. They're AVID strategies. So,
Sounds like a wonderful program.
Yeah.
so we'll be excited to share about the success of it.
Yeah. Yeah, we hope to bring kids in that kind of share what they're learning in the AVID elective.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's get started.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, personal employment issue.
That'll go into executive session.
Okay. Reports. I think we'll start with the student rep tonight. I know he's got
Yes.
tests this week.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know or may have forgotten, I struggle with names and faces too. My name is Brady Burrells. I'm currently a junior here, and my post-high school aspirations is to major in business management in the hopes of becoming a corporate business manager. But anyways, academically speaking, around East Troy, like Mr. Zest just mentioned, AP courses are coming up. They started early last week, and I think they end at the end of this week, right? Or do they go into, at the end of next week. So I'm sure those working at the offices in Dobeck have seen some of the kids around going into the gym to sit there for 3+ hours, which isn't fun, I'll speak for it. I had a pushed exam on Friday, which was 3 hours and 15 minutes, and I have another one the day after tomorrow. But AP exams, obviously graduation's coming up in June 9th, I believe it is. Speaking on sports, all of the spring sports are getting ready to go into the tournaments. This last weekend, tennis took second at the RBC tournament, so that was cool. There were a lot of new athletes. There's a lot of young athletes on that team. Like I'm sure a lot of people know Mr. Lindau. His son Dane is the #1 single on the varsity tennis team, and he's pretty good. So I think that's pretty cool. I think track girls took second at the RBC conference meet, and I think the boys took 4th. So that's what happened there. But baseball hasn't had their, they're sitting at about 500, and the tournament for that hasn't started yet in the playoffs. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got, unless Ms. Keene wants me to tack on anything else at the end. NHS induction was recently, Mr. Zest was there for the induction speech, I know, so that was cool. And the NHF has a lot of cool volunteer stuff, like the IGET woman mentioned. They do the senior prom. I know they did that last year. Every morning, bright and early, you'll see them out there doing the crosswalk stuff. So they're out there too. It's a lot of volunteer hours. I think they have to do something like like 36 hours or something of volunteer work. So that's a cool thing for them to do. But yeah, I think that's all I got for everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Edler.
Brittany stole my thunder on the graduation. No, it is June 9th at 1 o'clock. For those of you that can attend, I know you're busy, but if you can, it's always obviously a great culmination to everything. So, and then this Wednesday is last class. The middle school, if you're available, 7 o'clock. Even if you did not purchase a ticket, there's always a spot to be able to come and stand on the stage with myself and Mr. Steins up there, up above. I mean, not the stage, yeah. Up above, yeah. Up above. We're not playing. That's up above. So, but it's, you know, and then Kiwanis Student of the Month.
21st.
Liz, you have it. You have it.
21st.
Is it 21st? 21st, and that's at 6.
Tuesday the 21st.
And it's 6 here in the high school library, right? Plenty of other things probably, but those were some of the main ones I just wanted to mention. And if you're available. Oh, the graduation walk, which is great. So Kate, Stace and Kev, if you guys want to, I don't know, talk about it. Last year was the first year we did it, right? Or was it second year? Was it the second year? So I think that's, if you guys want to expand upon it to the board, just tell them about it, but I think it's great.
Yeah, with the staggered ending dates this year, it's a little different. So we're usually doing it tied to practice graduation for the seniors, but it's actually going to be the 24th, so next Friday, just during resource. So we'll go over about 9:30, we'll go to Prairie first, and then we'll go to Prairie. The band has asked, I haven't talked to you guys about this yet, the band has asked to come with us and play Pomps and Circumstance as we walk.
I think it'd be great.
And we don't have to play it over the PA. Usually we
That would
play
be
it over
great.
the speakers.
Yeah, and then the graduates that are in the band, I get to play their instrument
Oh, neat.
in March. So I'm also
Oh,
very, very excited
sure.
about that. There's about
The
10
kids
of them,
will
so.
think that's fun too.
Yeah, it might be a little loud, but that's all right. We can go with that, so.
Kids videotaped everything, and it's both the seniors and the primary students get pretty excited.
Sounds good.
I think the teachers are very excited.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, seeing them come back. So, that's it.
Thanks. Kathy?
So I just have a few pages in your packet about open enrollment. We have our final numbers from 18-19, and by final numbers I mean children, students can withdraw or enroll now late via the exception form, so there are changes all during the school year, which the way DPI handles it is it's literally prorated. So you'll get a percentage of the year for open enrollment payments, either in or out. It is locked as of, I couldn't tell you the date, but it's early May, like May 1st or something, the data gets locked. There's no more changes after that, there's no more prorations after that. But the page 22 of your school board packets, the smaller print one, that kind of shows the whole year of 18-19 enrollment. And bottom line, we are losing a little bit over what was projected in the budget. Our net result is a loss of about $8,045, because again, a few more open enrolled out kids came in, and open enrolled in, we also had a little bit of a bump, but again, only a $2,000 bump there, not as much as what was out. So primarily, again, I do that to see how close we came to the budget, nothing else. On page 21, flipping back, is now the start of that same sheet for 1920. So as you can see, there's different snapshots. There's the budget in January, then what's the budget in May because the open enrollment window closed. What happened on the actual third Friday count was September. Even though that's a third Friday count, we still put a little bit of padding in for the budget because, again, like I just explained, kids change all year long. And then what did the final end of year number show? So it's like this 5-step process. So again, on page 21 is now the start for 1920. You can see what we budgeted in January, what we now have as a projection after the enrollment window closes. And to say that this projection is the biggest estimate, like you have 75 new applications, 12 are duplicates, 2 kids were already out, they didn't need to file papers again, so you're down to 61 total new enrollments. 18 are currently attending East Troy, 43 have never been at East Troy, and then what we do is we take, okay, of those 61 new applications, we just guessed it's about 5 lines down, 54% come in. And what does that come from? I've tracked like 6 years of how many people applied, how many actually came in. So, and then we take an average of that and hope it's close. Because again, one student is $8,000, one special education student, $12,400. So you're off by 2 kids, quite a bit of money in my world, so anyway. So it's still a shot in the dark till September when you find out who actually comes. You know, for example, I was just counting here as somebody was talking. We do have 32 open in applicants from Palmyra, 32. Wow. But they've all, except for about 3 of them, applied to 3 different schools. McWanago, Kettle Moraine, us. Or, what's another one that's thrown in there quite a bit? Yeah, I can't tell from the sheet. Oh, yes, I can. McWanago, Kettle Moraine, us. McWanago, Kettle Moraine, Whitewater, McWanago, us.
And that doesn't mean they'll go anywhere.
And they could stay there, right?
Yeah. They're
Because
just meeting the
Palmyra's gonna be open
requirement
for
of
another year.
meeting the deadline for enrollment.
Yes. So again, that's, you don't know where they're going to land. And I think a lot of people were thinking we were gonna get all these Palmyra kids. Well, here's 32 and they might not even come to us. So, you know, it's not a lot. If you look at the detail of my like we have 51 new apps. Last year we had 36 new apps. So overall, we're up 15 in open enrollment in applications. As far as the budgeted numbers, you can see we're really close still using some of these projection methods to the open enrollment out number of 1.8 million. We are up a little bit in open enrollment in revenues. We were projecting a little bit of a bump, again, based on trends in open enrollment in revenues to begin with. So not much change between January and May for our numbers, but we'll see what happens when September.
Still a net loss line item right now in our district of about $1 million.
Correct, yes, we have 1.8 going out and 800,000 coming in, so still a net loss of $1 million out there.
All right, thanks Kathy. Amy, you got anything else?
I think I covered my part.
All right.
Her bowels have been used up, Steve. I want to say, I do not hold that
I
record tonight.
did say I felt like Chris.
Kate,
Feeling
you have
good?
anything?
I am. Feeling great.
I thought so.
I've got nothing new, so we'll move on to policy review and development. Second reading of the updates to the 500 policies.
Same one that was provided in the first one. So,
Without that change to payroll, it's too much detail to remember, but before I had struck through, I had included language of a strike through that we were going to eliminate the summer payroll, and I got the impression from your body language, whether I read it right or not, to not do that. So I took it off. So we would keep the summer payroll option for staff, of taking all their lump sum checks in June or continuing to pay them in July, August.
Okay. Anybody have any changes or recommendations on that? All right, final reading next month. Communications announcements.
Pretty much did mine there in the
All done?
updates, yeah.
All right, future items for the board. Anybody have anything?
Just wondering how the video's going.
Videos are done. I emailed all of you and stated that, so I apologize.
Oh, you didn't.
So, oh, you mean this video?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Our live stream.
I think the videos are going really well right now.
Where are they being live streamed?
Through
YouTube website.
Yeah.
And
On YouTube.
Broadcasting
Yeah.
channel.
Yeah.
And can people watch them after the fact?
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere? They can?
Yeah, they're archived on the YouTube
Watch it
channel.
again tonight.
Tony, archived on the East Troy Community School District
Where are
YouTube.
we promoting that?
On the YouTube channel.
You can put it on Facebook if you
I mean, do
want.
people
We can put it on the Facebook, and if they visit the website, does it get redirected?
I have an announcement on Facebook and the website about the archive videos on YouTube. They just show up under new videos.
Awesome.
We haven't really been.
I watched the last one.
I watched
I
it.
did. I really did. I just wanted to see what it was like and sounded like. Like saying less.
Good.
But, sorry, Tony, what I was referencing, now you brought it up, just so you, each one of the school buildings on our district website has been promoted and shared on Facebook and Twitter, and YouTube, but each one of them has one of their own school tour. And we have received a lot of positive feedback and a lot of views. A lot of views already. Some of them that have been out now for 2 weeks, like the high school has over 250 views. And we've received a lot of good feedback from people, even that we've had people for the open enrollment saying it's really, and Kate just told me somebody who was in the hiring process stated that they were really pleased watching those tours, and we were one of the first schools they thought that demonstrated that. So a lot of good feedback on those, so those have been shared. And again, I want to state too, as well as they're done, it's version 1.0. We will continue to update those, provide a different version, and as things change in the buildings, we will update those tours.
Great.
Perfect. All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session for discussion of personnel employment issue as provided under 19.851C.
See.
We have a second, roll call vote. Steve?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Closed session.
Boom.